Welcome, everyone, to episode 145 of Puppet Masters and Castle Freaks, the internet's leading all things Charles Band podcast, and also voted dumbest podcast of the year, which I find to be kind of mean, if we're being honest. I am one of your hosts, Jared Hornbeck, and I am coming to you from Puckerbush Gulch, located here in Brooklyn, New York, of course, or as everyone else refers to it, another one-horse town in the interstellar nowhere. So there was a lot there, but, luckily I'm not the only man on this podcast. No, who else is here with me?
Well, it's me, sexy space trash man Steve Rogers. I mean Steve Guntley, and this is the podcast about cosmic bloopers, six-gun Bertha, and positronic spacely sprockets. That's because this is the podcast about Petticoat Planet, a silly and sexy little softcore flick from our old buddies at Torchlight and Dave Dakota. Always a treat to check back in with these deeply silly softcore movies that really more and more feel like a time capsule more than anything else. But we're also very excited because we have a returning guest joining us here today. Who is with us today, Jared?
No, we have a really special guest today joining us, a return guest, as it were. So our return guest today is Kolleen Carney-Hoepfner, who is joining us again the first time she was here to talk about Horror Vision some 60-odd episodes ago. Still a freelance copy editor for venues such as Fangoria. We mentioned last time that she was working on her novel, and that novel has since been published. So I can't wait to learn more information about that. Or finished, not published. She's not in her head. No, I fucked that up, but that's okay. Kolleen, thanks for coming back. We'll straighten all that out in a minute.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk about this.
We're always excited to have you on, and especially for this one, which is deeply wild and deeply silly, and one of maybe the only Torchlight film that we've encountered so far that I would kind of rather watch without the sex scenes. In a weird way, I found this movie very endearing. I think it's got a good heart. I think it's got a couple of good one-liners in it. It's very, very catty. It's very silly. But I don't know. I kind of enjoyed everything that was going on with this until things got real slow, and then it's suddenly we're bumping Barbie dolls together, and things are just not really making sense.
Yeah, I don't often show my cards this early in a recording on one of these things, but we'll encounter some maybe slightly problematic elements that are maybe it's a product of its time, and it's kind of like you said, Steve, it's got its heart in the right place. So I think you can overlook some of those things, and there's definitely some narrative silliness that I would choose to ignore. When I ignore those things, I actually really like this movie. Yeah. It's so dumb. But it feels to me like the closest thing that one of these Torchlight movies has felt to a movie. I think Beach Babes from Beyond got there occasionally because it has the beats of a regular movie, but it's so wacky and so silly. This feels a little bit more focused than that movie does, which it's kind of amazing to be saying when you really think about the movie we're talking about, but it's true. I don't know. This movie really endeared itself to me, and it's not without its faults, or its flaws, but I found myself really enjoying this. It was kind of a delight, and I will say I watched this movie twice because I watched it once when we first decided we were going to do an episode on it, just to kind of see, is there enough meat on the bones here for this to justify it's an episode for itself?
Right.
And then I watched it again earlier today for the recording. And both times, I may not have watched the entire movie, but I did watch it twice.
Fast forward. Yeah. Colleen, was this a movie that you were familiar with prior to this episode?
No,
okay.
I wasn't familiar with it. And then when we were discussing which one I could come on for, just kind of looking through them and stuff, I was like, this seems up my alley. So I had never heard of it before. This is definitely a movie I would have been very obsessed with if I had known about it in high school.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it is goofy, but it is sweet in a way. I would have liked this the same way I liked Electra Woman and Dinah Girl, or
right.
Some sort of Sid and Marty Krofft nonsense that's not very good, but for some reason I like it.
Yeah.
This would have been that for me because this came out in 96. So I was 96. I was a freshman in high school
Mhm.
into sophomore year of high school. So I definitely would have, like, this would have been my whole personality probably.
I mean, you gotta love it because this is basically just take any episode of Star Trek in which they visit a planet that has become obsessed with one particular genre, and that's basically what you have. There's no reason for this to have the sci-fi element whatsoever. We never really see the spaceship. We never really see I think the only reason they split the difference is because they have house music on their soundtrack, and it doesn't really make sense for them to be having a rave in a club in the Old West. But it's kind of this goofy mashup of genres, which tells me that they wanted to do this intentionally. They wanted to make an homage to Star Trek and to do something goofy and fun like that. And I will always take it's a difficult needle to thread, but I think I prefer it if these Torchlight movies are not taking themselves so seriously.
Right.
We watched one called Huntress, which was probably one of the more handsomely mounted versions, no pun intended, but one of the most lavishly shot movies in this sort of milieu. And it was boring, and it was kind of washing over me. But then if you go too far the opposite direction, like Test Tube Teens from the year 2000, it's trying to be funny and it's not succeeding. And so it kind of goes over like a wet fart. This one threads the needle, I think. It's silly enough to enjoy on its own. You could probably cut this down and make a PG-13 or R-rated version of it that is an hour long and probably a little more enjoyable. And it's just kind of got a sweetness to it that I appreciated. Even if it's perpetuating a couple of, let's say, negative stereotypes about the way women interact with each other. Maybe not even a stereotype. That's not even a stereotype, I don't think. I think it's just kind of the...
Well, no, Steve,
Yeah.
see, you're wrong. Because, and this podcast gets along just fine without men. So I'm glad that Colleen is here to have this conversation with us. But you're wrong, because the year is 1996, right?
Yeah.
Chasing Amy is just around the corner. And if I've learned anything, it's that all any woman really needs is good dick.
Oh, God. Oh,
That's all it is. I mean, lesbians.
I
please.
generally
They just haven't met the right man yet.
I mean, just consider their battery budget alone.
battery budget alone.
That one
They
line.
get by just fine.
I want to say, though, before we get too far ahead, that I actually paused this about 10 minutes in and looked it up because I was like, are they on another planet? I thought maybe Petticoat Planet was just some kind of funny name. I tried not to look too much into it so I could be astounded by it.
Yeah.
On the first watch. And I was like, oh, they're supposed to be on another planet. But it's just this saloon and 2 other buildings. It's just this
Pucker
one
Bush Gulch is the capital of Petticoat Planet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just I was it was very late when I watched it. And I was like, wait, all right. They're not just in Texas or something.
If one were to hold the microscope to this, you might find a couple of inconsistencies with the plot. That's just, none of us are perfect in our art. But let's learn a little bit about Petticoat Planet, which was released November 26th, 1996. It's directed by David Dakota. Unfortunately, he's using his Ellen Cabot pseudonym, so that means he didn't like this movie. It's written by Matthew Jason Walsh, and it stars Elizabeth Caton, Troy Vincent, Leslie K. Sterling, and Betsy Lynn George. And that is every single speaking character in the movie. Petticoat Planet, it's, like I said, it's drafting off of the classic Star Trek episode format. And it's really... most of this is kind of just an opportune way to reuse the sets from Oblivion before they get destroyed. So that's exactly what they're doing. If this looks very familiar from some of the other movies that we've watched, that's because it is the exact same set where Oblivion and Oblivion 2 were shot.
That might be a reason why I liked it so much, because it just reminded me of Oblivion also, with these Wild West sets. It was okay, this movie essentially answers the question, what if Briscoe County Jr. just paused for a sex scene every 10 minutes?
Exactly, which is something we all want. Yeah. Now, alongside a movie called Lurid Tales, The Castle Queen, which was filmed simultaneously with this, Petticoat Planet is actually the last film to be released under the Torchlight shingle. They would shift over to Surrender Cinema after this, and that's kind of what they've been the entire time, but I still fully think of them as Torchlight, kind of always.
Yeah.
And we're almost completely done with the Torchlight
I think
run.
Castle Queen, or Castle Queen, Lurid Tales, or whatever that one's called. That's like the last one. And I had
Well, we've got Blonde
moment of
Heaven, and we've got
Blonde Heaven we didn't
Femalian as
include in it.
well.
Yeah, so there's a little, well, Familian was really hard for us to find. I think we might have easier resources or better resources now to locating that one
I
than when we were.
wanted to do.
Oh,
Yes. Yeah.
We'll go
I'll share a file
baseball.
with you. I physically bought the DVD and I have a file I can share with you guys. So yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, we'll go real inside baseball here. We're like, I forgot about Blonde Heaven because that was originally supposed to be part of a double feature episode that ended up not being a double feature episode.
Yeah.
So there is that one, and Femalian, which I forgot was like a last minute Hail Mary for something else. And then, Lurid Tales of Castle Queen. And that's really it. And I'm with you, Steve. Like when I think of any kind of softcore stuff that Charles Band was involved in producing or giving money to uncredited. Surrender Cinema I know is where they go, but it always, like, Torchlight has a nice ring to it. So that's kind of how I always like to remember them too. And, the Surrender Cinema stuff, especially once we get way more into the later stage, Sybil Richards, we might have to redefine the umbrella as to what is acceptable for this show. Because
that's the thing. Yeah, you were.
Well, so if we all joked before we started recording for this about how it was weird to be just like having our morning coffee and watching some softcore, first thing on a Sunday morning. The movie, one of the late Surrender Cinema movies that we had floated the idea of covering for this episode, I went on to, I was like, can we double them up? Like, what can we do? So I watched one of them, and it is just genuinely the closest we have ever come to just straight hardcore porn on this channel.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like, at what point are we just devoting an hour of a podcast, to a movie that is essentially a hardcore, everything but, close-ups of penetration, like in terms of angles and stuff, way more than this. This is just a goofy movie that has that like Skinamax sensibility to it, which makes it way more, enjoyable to cover.
Yeah, exactly. Some of those later ones are just like, it's clear these people are actually having sex. They're just shooting it in a way to obscure anything too graphic. But that also just like, okay, well, I mean, at this point we are just watching porn, and there's something a little bit more, I'm almost going to say innocent and endearing about the softcore ideals, because it is a lot of like, oh, order this VHS from Playboy and you'll watch a beautiful woman slowly touch herself for 15 minutes while Kenny G blasts on the sax. It's a lot of that. There's kind of a funny disconnect in these movies between the way sex actually occurs and the way it's being depicted. It's not even like it's not even a dreamlike state. It's like a video game cutscene or something. Like there's something deeply, weirdly alien about it. And that's just kind of what makes it a little more charming. Yeah, I think I don't want this to just become a porn review podcast. So yeah, we might have to limit some of those later ones. But I really was not able to find too much research on this movie. Not super well documented, unfortunately. So I figured we have a very small cast here. Might as well talk about everybody. Obviously, welcome back to the show, Elizabeth Caden, who I believe we have not talked about since Assault of the Killer Bimbos. Was that the last time? Yeah, it's been a little bit.
I don't remember if Assault of the Killer Bimbos or Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity came first.
Yeah,
but
she had a run
in both of them. She had a run, and I think I did this. I probably did this when we talked about her for the last time.
Yeah.
She's one of my favorite types of actors, which are these people who pop up in tons of these super low budget projects, and they're always game. Like if you look at Elizabeth Caden's run from the early 80s until, let's say, Petticoat Planet as like the demarcation point, she's in Silent Madness, which is a really fun 3D slasher movie. She is in Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity. She's in Assault of the Killer Bimbos. She's in Friday the 13th 7. She's in a movie where I think she might there might be a sequel to it, but she's the titular Necromancer, which is like a kind of silly low budget movie. She's in a movie that I think is overlooked and actually pretty good called Night Wish, which is like a psychological dream horror movie. She's in a bunch of the Vice Academy sequels. She's and I'm naming these things off the top of my head because she's clearly one of my favorites. She's also in one of the most oddly out of character movies, also directed by Dave Dakota, called The Girl I Want. And it's like a romantic comedy with her and Linnea Quigley. And
Interesting.
it's where she plays like a brainy nerd, and Linnea Quigley tries to make her over as like a hot prom queen, and she's trying to impress a guy who's a jock who goes through a transformation to become brainy to get her simultaneously. And it's actually like decent for that kind of silly kind of I guess maybe farce for lack of a better way to describe the kind of comedy it is. But no, I was gonna say we got to get Elizabeth Caton's like smoking jacket ready, because before you know it, she'll be a 5-timer probably. On the show, and she's one of my favorites in that way. And I love those kinds of actors. Like when we had the chance to talk to Brink Stevens, that was huge because she's one of those people. You look at her run through those years, and it's like I would much rather. I'm way more interested. No shade to like Jamie Lee Curtis. If I ever met Jamie Lee Curtis in person, I'd probably be super starstruck. But like, I'm much more interested in talking about the careers of Linnea Quigley and Brink Stevens and Michelle Bauer and Elizabeth Caton than I am of Jamie Lee Curtis or, you know, Adrienne King or people like that.
They've been covered a little bit more. Yeah. Other actresses here include Lisa K. Sterling, Leslie K. Sterling. She's just credited as Leslie K. now. She's a veteran soap opera actress, still quite active to this day. She did 332 episodes of Bold and the Beautiful. So that's almost a year of soap opera episodes spread out over like 20 years. And she's in a whole bunch of like Lifetime original movies and things like that. Our titular our signature beefcake here is Troy Vincent, who only did 2 or 3 small roles in movies. I think he retired very shortly after this. No idea what happened to him. And Betsy Lynn George was a teen model who had a lot of like walk-in roles on things like Twin Peaks, Lois and Clark. She's in Point Break in a party scene. She also appears in the aforementioned Lurid Tales. And after that, she just took like a 20-year hiatus and is just living her life and doing well. So yeah, that's the entire cast on this one. And really not a whole lot else to say other than, yeah, they reuse the sets of the Oblivion, and it's very apparent and it works. Like the Oblivion, we commented on it at the time, but like there's nothing about Oblivion that reads as an authentic Old West town, but it does feel like a touristy vision of an Old West town, and it kind of works in this futuristic setting where like the idea of the Old West has been diluted through movies and theme parks and things like that. So it looks a little staid.
It reminds me of, you guys are East Coasters, so I don't know if you've ever been to Canopy Lake Park in Salem, New Hampshire, but it's an amusement park that's been there since like the very early 1900s. It's still there, and I grew up going there, but like the original one was a very like frontier, like there's a log ride and there's an old mine that you like, the haunted mine. And then of course they've built onto it as they've gone, but it reminded me of like the saloon that you could take a picture at when you're like, when I was
totally.
It really reminded me of like of like that specific.
I love an old timey saloon.
Me too.
I grew up in rural Colorado, and so there were always summer jobs, and my mom was always trying to really encourage me to work at the local like Old West theme park and be like a rootin' tootin' cowboy walking around, and I still had the thick glasses back then as well that I need to see. And I'm just like, I don't think there's any part of me that reads as an Old West cowboy. I think if I'm like walking around here, people are gonna be like, their child has gotten lost and there's nothing. And it just sounded so dorky, but she knew I was into like theater and stuff. And so she's like, oh yeah, this is obviously a natural extension of that. I'm like, yeah, no, I have my limits. But it looks fun playing around
here. Same. Movies. I mean, you can't walk down the block without tripping over an Old West theme park here. So
oh my God. Yeah. That happens all the time because famously Old West towns were set up on the East Coast. So this movie just kind of like starts with a rave, and it's not super concerned about bringing you into the universe of the world of what's going on, or like explaining that this is a planet that found an old Zane Grey novel and built their life around it or something like that. No, This is just a unironic, old-fashioned, Old West town, but everybody seems to have kind of like modern sensibilities. They have a lot of earth, like 1970s pop culture references, and they're dancing to kind of like trance music at the beginning of this with like strobe lights and everything. So it's like, okay, what's going on? Like right off the bat, we don't really know what's going on. But
well, there's, I dare to even say that there might be both tonal inconsistencies and historical anachronisms in this movie. I'm sorry to even suggest such a thing, but there's a hilarious, like, even within the movie itself, Elizabeth Caton pretty early on makes a comment about sci-fi movies, but then it's sort of presented that they don't know what media is after that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like they're referencing other things, and it's like, I don't understand any of the words that are coming out of your mouth. And it's like, but you just referenced sci-fi movies before, so you know what television and movies are.
Perhaps they mentioned this and I missed it, but I would like to know how they know what men are in the first place.
Yeah, okay, so it's implied that all the men in this town were killed when a mine collapsed.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
But I don't know how long it's been. Like they clearly like Lily, who's like the younger character who works at the saloon, she's probably in her early 20s, and she doesn't seem to have ever seen a man before. But the other women who are in their early 30s seem to know what men are. But
she also like seems to know like what she's missing without the men. Like,
yeah, so, she's got a longing. Yeah.
What is the education here? Do they have like some sort of sex ed when they're younger where they learn like the ins and outs of things, for lack of a for no pun intended?
No, they missed an opportunity for another sex scene in this movie. Everybody goes to visit the school marm, and she's wearing a bustier. Turns out, yeah. Why
Listen,
not?
That was a line of dialogue that got a legitimate laugh out of me, though, where he's just like, "What are you supposed to be? Some old-fashioned school marm?" I don't know why the phrase "school marm" just really tickled me in that moment.
Word. Yeah.
No, I like to think that this. This is the town that exists like as the prelude after like the Ballad of Harry Warden, like we said.
Yeah. I mean, they're making do. They all look great, and they're moisturized and happy and in their lane, and
they're all hot.
And they're all hot, and they're all just having lesbian sex with each other, and that seems to be going great.
All the men and all the lesser attractive women were in that mine.
Yes.
It also seems untenable. Like eventually there will not be anybody else. Like,
right. Yeah. Well, we kept all those nubile women in town to keep them safe. Oh no.
One of the funniest things about watching the movie the second time was I watched it this time with my Bluetooth synced to my TV with my earbuds in.
Yeah.
And there might be only 4 speaking cast members really in this movie, but the amount of hooting and hollering and screaming in the ADR was so funny, especially in headphones, because during that like rave scene, it's just a sea of voices in the background just going woo, 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 and just like laughing, and it was so funny because there's like all of maybe 25 people in the entire rave.
The extras in Petticoat Planet are superstars. Okay, I was watching them a lot. Yeah, like you said, there's a lot of hooting and hollering. There's a scene in the middle of the movie where like the mayor and the sheriff are having one of their catty conversations, and in the background there's just a gunfight breaking out. It's just two women at a poker table like pointing guns at each other, and like it's emphasized on the soundtrack. We hear the gun cocking, but we never see this play out. So clearly like they're just being told, it's like, okay, go do some Old West stuff in the background, and they just are having a great time and like pretending to shoot each other, and it's ridiculous. And commented on.
I watched them very closely at the very end, and they're just staring at the sky for like 2 beats too long, and I was like, this is so funny. They're just like, but they're just like bemused looking. It was very fun. I was like, I love these people. I hope they're doing good.
No, they're having such a good time. Yeah.
Yeah, I was laughing though, just watching this movie with like the Old West town, because obviously it's just like, it's all of these women, and it's like you said, all of the unattractive women and men were killed in the mine. And it just reminded me, like on The Simpsons when they go to Bloodbath Gulch, and he's like, "Oh, now we're gonna go to the mission." And Marge is like, "Oh, thank God, there's lots of prostitutes in there."
Yeah, exactly. And it's implied that like this town has reached some kind of equilibrium, that everything seems to be working, but then a man gets introduced to the ecosystem, and his name is Steve Rogers, which at this time would have been kind of a deep cut. Like Captain America was like nerd shit, and it was also like kind of on the outs, like Captain America hadn't really had a good arc in a long time. So it was not common knowledge of who Captain America was.
Right. For anyone involved at this time, like Captain America, for all intents and purposes, was Reb Brown.
Right. Yes. Or the son of J.D. Salinger. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Matt Salinger. Yeah. That's Albert Pune's Captain
That's
America
an Albert
movie,
Pune,
right?
Yeah.
You know what? Not as bad as its reputation.
Pretty funny. Yeah, pretty fun movie. But this guy shows up and he's wearing like a little. At first I thought he was wearing like a little black dress. Like he had the very spaghetti going on his. It turns out it's like a wrestling onesie, but I'm like,
it's a big show unitard on.
The only moment my husband saw, like he went to do other things. It was very late. We had just watched one battle after another too. So, and he was like,
"Oh, movie than this."
Yeah, he was like, "Oh, a singlet," and then he just walked away. That was the only commentary he had for the whole movie, and then he just walked away. He came back when it was over. And he was like, "How was it?" I'm like, "Oh, it was good."
Well, because this is a movie you don't watch this movie with other people. Like this is a you watch by yourself movie, which I want to ask you, Colleen, because we're all of us are relatively in the same age group. And so I think one of the things that made this movie so endearing to me was it really had that this is a bizarre movie that I would stumble across on cable, like in the middle of the night when I was like adolescent or in my early teens. And it would feel like, my parents went to sleep. I'm like watching TV at 2 a.m. and it's like, oh, what is this movie? I'm not supposed to see this movie. Because we had one of those cable boxes, the black boxes in my house.
I have a really good,
and good. So we, and it had a de-scrambler button on the back. So I think my parents had blocked out like the Spice Channel and the Playboy Channel and stuff like that. But because my friends and I were resourceful, we figured out that if you flip this switch in the back, it made everything go up a channel. And so even though it wouldn't come in perfectly clear, it was clear enough to watch with the occasional like fuzz. But I would watch, it reminded me of those kind of movies or Skinamax movies. And it just made me feel like it was a movie I wasn't supposed to be seeing. And so like I wanted to ask, like, what's your history with those kind of like Skinamax softcore movies?
I am so glad you brought this up because that's literally what I was going to talk about next. I do want to mention too, my son is 21 and he actually walked in while I was watching this and he was like, "What are you watching?" And I was like, "It is not as good as you think it might look." Like, this is about, it was the two women, it was the first sex scene. And I was like, this doesn't even really work like this way. But we also had black boxes. And we had like 5 of them. My dad is a big TV and movie person. And we did like probably the only like ethically weird thing my family ever did. My parents, not me, but my parents, we had like 5 black boxes. We had one in each room, their room, the living room, my bedroom, my brother's bedroom, the basement. And parents did not, I think my aunt like knew someone. My parents did not scramble anything. They just said, "Don't watch this channel after this time," which of course was immediately what I did.
Oh, of course.
And I always talk about how I had a tape and it was, I forget, probably HBO something. I was taping Natural Born Killers so I could watch it. And I just let the tape run. I went to sleep and it recorded Teenage Bonnie and Klepto Clyde.
Oh, yeah.
No one has ever heard of but me. I'm always trying to get the American Cinematheque to let me like screen it because it's just so, and they're like, I don't even think that exists anymore. But I always talk about those types of movies that like you stumbled on and you're just like, or shows. When my friend first moved out here, and of course I was from Massachusetts, I had never been to Los Angeles. He was like, "Oh, I live in Sherman Oaks." I'm like the softcore porn show? And he was like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, it was like a show on Showtime or something. And it was it was like a sitcom, but it was like, the Latina maid was like nude all the time. And it was like it wasn't like super hardcore or anything, but I just stumbled on these things and people are like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, that's because I was up all night watching my illegal cable. And so like I was literally gonna say this does have that feeling of like I let the tape run and then I was like, what did I get after Natural Born Killers? And it's just some gold that's almost transcends Natural Born Killers in the sense of like, this is what stuck with me. Like I think about Teenage Bonnie Klepto Clyde all the time and no one knows what I'm talking about. It's
So I have a similar
world.
story.
And Scott,
yes. Yes. I'm saying yes as if I knew that. I looked it up on IMDb, but it is both of those people.
You can watch it. I loved it. I loved that movie. So
yeah, I used to have relationships with movies like that too. Like I would catch the weirdest shit, and I remember on must have been a premium cable channel. It was either Cinemax or Showtime, but I remember seeing. I think the first time I ever really was aware of who Linnea Quigley and possibly Michelle Bauer were. Was I accidentally, I think same thing as you, Colleen, I think I accidentally recorded a movie called Assault of the Party Nerds.
Yes,
which was a softcore movie with them in it. And like, yeah, I have such a fondness for just this super weird shit that I would see because, anything that in my brain I felt like this is something I'm not supposed to be seeing was then imminently more interesting. Because it felt like kind of a forbidden fruit or something that I wasn't supposed to have, and so I had a real fondness for movies like that. And then, like you were mentioning before, how with this movie you can fast forward through, or you could cut it down to like a PG-13. I mean, that was how so many movies like this I saw for the first time on Up All Night. It's like I didn't know that like a bikini car wash company movie had nudity in it. Like, as far as I was concerned, it was like sexual situations, but then it would cut before there was any nudity. So like, I didn't know that. To me, that's what wasn't maybe not till I saw them then on like a premium cable channel. But this movie has that energy, and it was just bringing me back to a time when I would just flip the channels and find the most bizarre stuff, and it really got me interested in learning more about these movies that were kind of flying under the radar. And this is, it's great to be having this kind of episode because sometimes I'll look, we have a relatively obscure Full Moon or Empire movie, and I'll look and I'll be like, how well is this one covered? And I'll search it in podcasts and it'll be like, okay, some of the bigger titles have been done a lot. Maybe some of the more obscure ones, it's like, oh, 2 or 3 shows have covered this. Nobody has covered this movie. I don't think there is a single podcast episode that has ever talked about this movie. And here we are.
There we go. Putting our flag down.
I want to also just mention that my parents got caught with those black boxes years later and had to pay a fine, and they were like really mortified about it.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, why are you like, I think the fine was like $2,000, right? It was like sizable. I was in college, so it was like 2002, something like that. And I was
still a decent fine.
I was like, do you not realize that like wrestling pay-per-views alone, the first year we probably watched $2,000. Like you had this for like 5 years, free cable every channel. Like you got off light. That's great. That's a great accomplishment. Good job, guys.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
They're just so goody two shoes. And I'm like, no way, man. It's for the cable channels. So, but kids don't like, not to sound like a crotchety old woman, but like my son's generation, 21 or younger, they don't have that like flipping through and finding just some bizarre bullshit. Like maybe they have that with like, if you just kind of let YouTube algorithms take over, but there's no such thing as flipping through cable anymore. And it's, I think that's part of the reason why there's such a weird sort of disconnect with like film with that generation. Like I see, and I try to get him to watch so much stuff with me, and he will for the most part. But like, I'm like, when I was your age, I was just, and then I landed on something and it was crazy. And then it became my entire life for like a year.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't have that. And there's just something to be said about how streaming has ruined a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, we were talking about that recently when we were covering film gore and just how like
Mhm.
there was this prurient kind of thrill to finding these like brown paper bag sort of movies, that felt like these cursed objects that you weren't supposed to be seeing. And the closest thing we kind of have to that anymore is just like the depths of Tubi, like just really digging in and looking for the weirdest possible thing you could find on Tubi. But even then it's just not quite the same experience, it's this kind of brush with danger that you would get by like trying to find these objects and these artifacts. Like it was really, yeah.
Well, the brush with danger, but then also the fear of getting caught when it's like I would have my
Yeah.
friends over, and just like I would do with horror movies where it was like, maybe when I was 10 years old, I was showing them like Nightmare on Elm Street. But then when I was like 13, 14, it was like, oh, you want to watch Co-Ed Confidential? Like we're going to like.
Yeah.
Mute.
Yeah.
Someone's walking by.
My mom's gonna see what scrambled thing I'm watching.
Last channel, you put on like The Simpsons. You could just hit last channel and it'll go.
Yeah.
Just watching the great Simpsons episode.
You got the escape button there. Yeah. This movie approached the brim of having like a satirical feminist kind of message about it, because the idea is that the town is like working fine and everything's going pretty smoothly until the introduction of this overconfident literal garbage man who's this like shameless misogynist who's like banging half the women in town. Like he's the one who comes in and throws off the ecosystem. So like the former friends are now turning on each other and fighting over who gets to be with the man and things like that. The thing that kind of stops it from having that message is that he kind of gets away with everything and doesn't really learn anything. Like at the end of the day, he gets to just like bang all these women. He sows a bunch of discord and then he gets what he wants and leaves. Like there's no real message or arc for him. We get a couple of fun moments where he's like embarrassed. They put him in his underwear up on the hangman's gallows and then decide to fine him $40, just to kind of fuck with him. Like that was actually kind of funny. And there are a couple little moments where he gets cut down a little bit, but he always bounces back because, these women are just kind of sent into a frenzy when he arrives.
Well, no disrespect to Dave Dakota. We've actually talked about him many, many times on the show, more probably than we have literally anyone else. We probably said his name more than we've actually said Charles Band's name. If I'm
Honestly,
being honest,
maybe. Yeah. He's at least up there in the 5,
yeah. So, and Matthew Jason Walsh, who is the writer of this movie, I believe was also an openly gay man. If I'm wrong about that, then feel free to correct me, listeners, in Spotify comment or via email. But I think the same, there is definitely a tried and true Dakotaism that comes through in these movies, which is that when it is just the women, maybe there are some fun exchanges when they're fully clothed. But when they're starting to then take their clothes off, to say that they are then shot with indifference is an understatement.
Most of the, I would say, especially during like the girl scenes, most of the focus is being put on what they're wearing and the fabric of their lingerie.
What they're wearing, which they do not remove. And for a very long portion of this movie, I was like, are they just never nude in this movie? Which is fine, like it doesn't matter. But then they get nude and I was like, oh, that's weird. But also very the first 2 women scene is very male coded.
It is.
They're in like lingerie, they do not remove it, and then like she's positioned behind her in a way that suggests that she's having sex with her from behind. I'm like, that doesn't work like that.
Yeah,
there's something.
It does not.
I was watching this. I'm like, who's getting anything out of this? Clearly they are both in the throes of passion. But
yeah, I like that they just laid next to each other for an extended amount of time.
Yeah,
one at one point, one's on the floor. I was like, this is very interesting. But
well, we've used
bloodletting, which is like a movie I'm also kind of obsessed with. So
yeah.
I don't know.
We covered a few other of his things on here too.
Yeah, but I don't think they've ever seen 2 women make love, and that's fine. It's not a big deal. But I just thought it actually kind of made it more endearing to me. I was like, this is just not how any of that works.
It's
kind of fun.
It's performative, but not in a way that porn is performative. It's performative in the way that like community theater is performative, or like art house theater. It's like this is all. It's very strip club coded, you know, where it's just like I don't know. And again, we've talked about that a lot on these Torchlight episodes. Like there's a big strip club kind of mentality to a lot of these. The idea that like, well, obviously what men like is just watching women that they can't touch or interact with in any way just wiggle their butts to music. Like that's obviously what's going to work. So hence we get like a 5-minute sequence of a girl spinning on a balcony to strobe lights from a long distance. Like it's a very long shot that entire time, you know. And the things that we have like that are closest to like actual sex that would occur are shot like through a very smoky haze and from a wide distance. So like we can't really see much of what's going on anyway. But then we get like the first scene with the sheriff and Steve Rogers she is like doing a striptease to his butt while he is chained to a wall wearing sunglasses. Like, is that supposed to be a blindfold? What is he getting out of her rubbing her butt on his butt through bars?
My favorite.
What do you like to know?
My favorite part of that scene is the very unenthusiastic whip, where she's like not whipping it at all. She's just kind of like, like.
And also, that is the wrong kind of whip. That is an Indiana Jones whip that hurts people.
Yeah.
This is like, this will flay you open. This is a bullwhip. Like
all these sex scenes are almost too respectful.
Right.
Like,
yeah. Exactly.
They're playing it so safe that it's like. Well, that's not why I'm watching.
Yeah, I take umbrage even with the ones in the beginning being called sex scenes, because they're foreplay scenes.
Yeah.
Like,
they are. Yeah.
They're, you know, very extended, you know, like they go on and then it cuts to when you think this one's going to be over. Oh, nope. Now they're just laying next to each other and one is licking the other one's fingers. And it's like, and then that goes on for a couple of minutes and then they switch again. And it's not until Steve Rogers arrives and after the scene you were talking about there, because that one also is not, it's just like an erotic striptease scene. And it's not really until we get with Steve Rogers and Elizabeth Caton that it then becomes like, okay, this is now supposed to be a sex scene when they're in the tub, I think.
Yeah, they're in a tub. Yeah. The sex scenes are interminable. They just keep going. I would love to know the collective runtime of the sex scenes versus the rest of it. If I had more time,
they really stretch on, and they don't really escalate like in the way that you would expect that they would. Like they go in some weird directions, and I'll give them that, but they're not super engaging just because they're shot sort of indifferently, and they're shot too filtered, too distant, too cold, you know, like there's just not a lot of like, obviously these are very like good looking women and like, you know, and he's fine, but this is a movie that's actually having much more fun when everybody is clothed, you know, like it feels like this is obligatory, but like everybody's actually enjoying like kind of playing around with this dialogue and playing these like catty characters who are like going after each other, hands off my man, you know, like that kind of stuff. Like,
yeah, I mean, well, think about how fun Julie Newmar was in Oblivion.
Yeah, totally.
Like the mayor of the old West town. Like, yeah. And I think, you know, I think that's what sets this one apart probably from the other Torchlight movies is that I think the guy who plays Steve Rogers, Troy Vincent. I was going to say, it makes sense that it's like an Italian first name as a last name, because this guy was beamed to Petticoat Planet in the middle of his shift at Luigi's Pizza.
Absolutely.
And he also has, it's 1996, so he's got like a stupid Matt LeBlanc haircut, which is what everyone had.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like Leslie Kay and Elizabeth Caton and I guess Betsy Lynn George. I mean, she's playing, obviously, I forget the character's name in Oblivion, who's kind of like the vanilla girl. Like that's who she's playing, and that's fine. But they're all giving like kind of fun performances for the type of movie that this is. And I think that's what kind of separates this from something like, you know, Beach Babes from Beyond the first one, even, which is the better of them, is like
Yeah.
really silly dialogue, a lot of like, like off a microphone noises and slide whistles and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
then that cuts to like a sex scene, and it's kind of like, well, this feels like out of place. Here, it is kind of jarring when they cut because everything is so light and comedic before that. But I think what made this one stand out to me was the fact that, yeah, like when they're clothed and when they're just like, when it's just the story and it's these characters in the town together, I think the energy is fun, like, and it kind of works as an actual movie more than a
Yeah.
lot of these other productions do, to me anyway.
Well, and there's kind of a sweetness to it. Like we have this love story going on between the Lily, who's kind of the naive barmaid, and Steve, and they're undermining it constantly by just having him like go and like bang the other two while they're sniping at each other. But there are moments like where it's like, oh, okay, these two are kind of like cute together. I'm pulling for them a little bit. And I think it's little touches like that kind of just make this, it just feels a little bit more affectionate and less trashy. This feels less like like kind of titillation and more like they wanted to tell like a fun, sexy little story, and it's a hard thing to get right. Beach Babes was probably the closest that we got to this kind of energy, and that like doesn't really work, and that's kind of more of a good bad movie.
Well, sure, and everyone in this one seems to kind of get the assignment a little bit and is having fun, whereas like for Beach Babes 2, Cave Girl Island, it's like when those sex scenes, it's like they're being held at gunpoint.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you feel bad for everybody in that one. You don't feel bad for anybody in this one. Like, I don't know, I never got that energy off of it. It's deeply insubstantial, but as far as these kind of things go, and it is just kind of bizarre that like, I guess you could argue that since the purpose of this movie was to be like a sexy TNA movie, and that was the thing we were all skipping through, you could argue that this is a failure on that front, that this is not really succeed as erotica. I mean, your mileage may vary, obviously, but like it didn't really connect for all of us, but like it's cute and it's charming and it's like 10% more clever than it needs to be. And that's just something what I've heard. The cop rock joke. And he's making like Brady Bunch references, and he says he doesn't want to be like the an all-female version of Gunsmoke. Like he's making all these like old references.
The cop rock joke made me actually laugh out loud. I was like, oh my God. Because they're like, do something more current, which of course is like
5 years old at that point, 6 years old. Yeah.
Like the 20 seconds that Cop Rock was on the air. Like, I don't remember when Cop Rock was on, but like
it was 1990.
I could tell you.
Was it really that early?
It was 1990 because there was one person that I know in my life who was a huge fan of that show, and it was my uncle. And I remember him like taping it when it aired and then almost like forcing the rest of us to watch it.
I would have to throw this out.
That early.
I'll have to throw this out for our listeners who may not know what we're referencing, because this has been fully memory hold, but it is on DVD now. I bought it like a while ago and watched it. It's pretty insane. But Cop Rock was a ABC show, I believe. It was by Stephen Bochco.
Stephen Bochco, yeah.
At this point, he was in between Hill Street Blues, which was a huge hit, like cop drama in the 80s, and NYPD Blue, which is one of the biggest cop shows of all time. So he's right smack in the middle of that. And what he does with all of that clout is he makes a police musical, a serialized 13-episode police musical with some of the most hilariously misguided songs of all time. Like, it is really jarring. It's really, it's clunky and funny in a way. You kind of just have to see it to believe it. I would say like watch a clip show, because like the episodes go on for a full hour and most of them are kind of boring, but like the musical sequences are hilarious in that show. Definitely worth checking out.
It's kind of crazy to me. It makes me really happy to think that like in the 1990 pilot season, we had, Stephen Bochco pitching Cop Rock, but then that was airing at the same time as the Puchinsky pilot.
Oh, Puchinsky. Oh my God. Peter Boyle and a talking dog. I forgot about that one.
Peter Boyle as a talking dog.
That's right. He is the talking dog. Yeah, that's
I've
right.
never heard of that in my life.
Oh, look that up, Colleen. It's crazy.
Go watch
because
the trailer for it. It's a real show.
I think it's a Jim Henson puppet that they use for the bulldog for like it's like half a real dog and then half a Jim Henson puppet.
Yeah.
Oh
So
my
Peter
God.
Boyle is like a no nonsense detective who dies in the line of duty, and his spirit is basically put into a dog, and it's fucking hilarious. And it's one of those things. People, I remember there was like a still frame from it or a trailer that emerged recently. I'm going to say within the last like 6 months, and people were convinced it was AI. And people were arguing in the comments, being like, "Oh, that's not a real show," and it's like, no, that 100% was a real show.
Also, we should clarify. Oh yeah, we should clarify. This show is not a comedy. This show was a mostly serious like cop drama. I don't think it ever made it past the pilot episode. I don't even know if the pilot episode aired. I don't remember, but leaked out there.
That genuinely looks like a man dressed as a dog. Like with still human features. I do not like this at all.
Yeah.
Well, that was when you could cash in on that because you had the Puchinsky pilot, which came about the same time as they syndicated Turner and Hooch as a show. But then also you had Jack Scalia as a detective in a show where he was partnered with a dog called Tequila and Bonetti.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
So this was like this was the salad days for like dog detectives.
Dog detective.
Dog detective.
It's like it's 1990 now. What's the wave of the future?
It really is. It's like a fascinating relic of that time.
I miss those insanely dumb, like big swing sitcoms, you know, My Mother, the Car and all that. Like, yeah, oh, my neighbor's an alien. Like, yeah.
Do you remember Hi, Honey, I'm Home?
I was just going to bring up Hi, Honey, I'm Home.
I love Hi, Honey, I'm Home. It's such a clever concept.
Yes.
I really liked that show.
Are you talking about the Hitler one? The Heil, Honey, I'm Home?
No. Hi, Honey, I'm Home.
Oh yeah, my God.
It was like the neighbors were from a sitcom, but they were in like a real life.
I do remember that.
I remember watching it on like Nick at Night. Like they had it like syndicated on Nick at Night.
Yeah.
Like,
I can actually remember the theme song.
Hi, honey, I'm home. Yeah. I mentioned it all the time. People are like, I do not know what you're talking about. And I'm like,
do you remember the Charmings?
Yes, I loved
the Charmings. Yeah, somebody married Prince Charming, and then they moved into like a normal suburban neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Like they have fairy tale people dropping by. It's so goofy. I
think that's the first show I remember being canceled because I was like young and I remember liking it. And
why isn't it on anymore?
And I remember being like, why can't I watch it? And my dad being like, that got canceled. I didn't conceptualize like how that worked.
You didn't know that could happen. Yeah.
But I want to watch it. So, oh my God.
Wild tangent, but I just want to say one last thing, and that is Puchinsky is the TV dog equivalent of the Renesmee doll from the last Twilight movie.
It's so off-putting. I didn't like it. I'm not watching that. That's going to scare me.
Watch the trailer. It's pretty funny.
You got to watch the trailer, though. The trailer is hilarious. It's one of those things that's thankfully preserved to where, I mean, you can probably find the entire pilot on YouTube, but I don't know why you would want to. It's totally such a weird thing. It's like it's very much a drama, except for in the times when it's like, because Peter Boyle is now like a bulldog, there's just a bunch of jokes about dog farts in it.
Right. Yeah. Which you have to imagine Peter Boyle's farts smelled like dog farts already.
I just think it's crazy to do Cop Rock and then NYPD Blue.
It's a wild, like, what a bounce back, right? Like, yeah, what a crazy bounce back.
That's when my, like, singular obsession with Dennis Franz started. Like, when I talk about Dennis Franz being the love of my life, and I am not being funny. People think I'm being
once you saw his ass, you were like, that's it?
I love him. And people think I'm goofing around. I'm like, I'm not joking. I love him. Like, I'm not to speak for all women everywhere, but like I find that comes up a lot. My close friend, she said her formative childhood crush was not like Brad Pitt or Tom Cruise or anything like that. Her formative childhood crush was Bob Hoskins. Yeah,
and that's kind of informed her taste in men to this day. And she's just unironically loves like a short, bald man.
Yeah, and it's not surprising to me. There's just something about it.
Yeah,
they watched Mona Lisa and they were like, he can fix me.
He can fix me. Yeah.
I watched Super Mario Brothers and they were like, I don't know, there's just something about him.
Oh, what did I watch him in recently? Where he has like he plays like a crooked pet store owner. Oh, it's Shattered. Wolfgang Petersen's Shattered. He plays a crooked pet store owner / private detective, trying to solve the where did Tom Berenger's memories go? Like, yeah, crazy movie.
So, gentle listener, if you take nothing away from this podcast, it's that Dennis Franz is a sex symbol. Bob
Yes.
Hoskins is awesome, and the Puchinsky trailer is something that you should definitely seek out.
Absolutely. Oh, so
Anyway,
sorry to
Petticoat
interrupt, guys.
Planet, everyone.
Yeah, my positronic Spacely sprocket just came in, so I think I can repair my ship and get out of here. It's about time we wrap up the episode. Thank you so much, Kolleen, for being back here. Oh my God, we love having you on. You're a blast. What are you working on right now? Where can you where can people find all of your cool stuff?
Well, I at Kolleen Carney is usually like social media wise, Twitter, Blue Sky, Kolleen B, I think on Instagram. Last time I was on, I was working on my first novel. I recently finished it, though. I think I'm going to work on. I think I'm going to edit a couple things, but I am now in the arduous process of looking for either an independent, like an indie publisher, or like a literary agent. I'm primarily a poet, and it's so different with poetry. Like with poetry, you just know someone. They're like, I'll publish it for you. So this is not kind on my ADHD or my just like general I'm busy otherwise, and I don't really want to shop it around. But it's also a hard sell because it is pretty graphic, both violently and sexually, and we're in like a weird sort of conservative swing when it comes to that stuff. So if anyone wants to buy a book called Fist, call me.
Yes, I know we have a lot of like literary people who listen to our show and who have been on our show and everything. So if y'all want to reach out to our Instagram and connect, we can connect you. Yeah, I would love to see that happen.
Oh my God. Otherwise, I'm working on a second one, but I will admit I've been very busy lately, just doing, all sorts of stuff. Also, if you're in the Southern California area and you go to any horror conventions, come see me at the Fangoria booths. I will be doing CreepyCon in January. So
very nice.
But otherwise, yeah, just kind of keeping busy. So that's where you can find.
Hell yeah.
Violently graphic, sexually graphic. Kolleen, why did you not just lead that you were right now working on the novelization of Petticoat Planet?
Yeah.
And I should novelize this and like make it like really good. I could do it. I think I could.
You could do it. You could do it.
Do it just for fun. I'm working on a Petticoat Planet novelization.
Yeah.
Everyone's asking for it.
I mean, you might be careful because the market is definitely going to be very saturated with such texts.
Oh, yes.
So you really need to make yours stand out.
I wonder if there's any Petticoat Planet like fanfic
slash fiction.
Oh, there's gotta be, right? This is it exists. Everything exists. Yeah.
Well, listen, you know what? We're wrapping up with final thoughts, and as silly and as inconsequential as this movie is, I had a lot of fun with it, and probably the one I enjoyed the most of all the Torchlight movies that we've covered. And it isn't just because I really like Elizabeth Caton, probably, but it probably had a little bit to do with it. But like, I definitely didn't feel like it was a chore watching this. The second time that I watched it, which was like a few hours ago, I fast forwarded through the long protracted scenes that maybe aren't the best, but like I had fun with this and I enjoyed it, and I'm hoping that this is really satisfying an itch for someone. For someone, and what I mean by that, not so much the movie. I mean, yes, that too, but it's one of a million. I mean, there were so many softcore Skinamax movies like out there. There's so many to choose from. But I mean, in terms of like a movie like this being documented on this kind of show, like I really hope there's like one person who sees this file come out and is like, yes, they're going to talk about Petticoat Planet. I don't know if that person exists, but if you are, thank you so much for, joining us on the show, or, we may rename the show Frontier Justice after that, just because they could throw that term around.
We may have to.
So many. Yeah. I mean, you may have taken how do they say it? You might have taken a wrong turn at the intergalactic highway to get here.
Yeah.
But you're here and you found us. And hopefully you also have access to social media. So if you want to follow the show and what we've got going on week to week, you can follow us at _Castle Freaks. You can follow me at _Giallo_Jared. The best thing to do if you're a fan of the show is to jump onto Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening, leave a 5-star rating, maybe a brief review if you feel so inclined to do so. We will still be updating the show on Blue Sky, and we will have audio versions of the show on our YouTube channel. It's a lot of work promoting a show organically, and it's not the only one that Steve wants to take a minute to tell you about. So, Steve, what else have you got going on?
Oh, well, thank you for setting that up. I am also the host of the show Cinema Arcade, which is a cinema and arcade mashed together. That is what we do. We are watching movies and then playing the video games based on those movies. When you hear this episode, we are in the midst of a month of Christmas episodes. So we're talking about Nightmare Before Christmas. We're talking about Jim Carrey's The Grinch. We're talking about Jim Carrey's The Christmas Carol. And then we're wrapping up the year with Rise of the Guardians, a movie that definitely exists. And we've got so much fun stuff out there already, and even more fun stuff coming up in the future, as do we on this show. You're going to want to tune in next week because we are talking about an Empire Films release, one of the last ones that we have of that. And it's going to be called Walking the Edge, and it stars Robert Forster, the great square-headed, square-jawed Chicago character actor Robert Forster. Love that guy. Excited to get into this. I know nothing about this movie. I've never heard of it.
It's a fun one. It's not entirely unlike Bill Lustig's Vigilante, also starring Robert Forster.
Yeah.
So if you were a fan of, Enemy Territory or Deadly Weapon or some of those like MGM full Empire distribution movies, like you'll like this one. And I think it kicks off maybe a couple of weeks actually in a row of Empire stuff. We're going to be hitting some the last kind of few remaining early Empire in a little stretch there before we get back to some Full Moon proper. But no, it's a good one. We've got a really fun guest, and I'm excited to get into that one because gritty, kind of like person pushed too far vigilante type movie, one of my favorite subgenres.
Yeah.
So definitely a fan of that. Walking the Edge is a pretty good one. So it's going to be a fun episode. So thank you for everyone who tuned in to listen to us talk about Petticoat Planet. Thank you again to Kolleen for taking the time to record with us. And we will see you next time when we walk the edge.